In 1950, the American dream came wrapped in white picket fences and cost just $7,400. You didn't just buy a house, you bought space, peace, and community. There was a yard for your kids to run in, real wood floors under your feet, and neighbors who knew your name. In 1955, gas was 29 cents a gallon. $5 filled your tank and still left you enough for a glass bottle of Coke and a pack of gum, and you weren't the one pumping it. A young man in a pressed uniform did it, for you cleaned your windshield and called you sir. That same year, the Chevy Bel Air hit the road. Two-tone paint, gleaming chrome, and a V8 engine that roared like freedom. Even when it was parked, it looked like it was in motion. Driving one wasn't transportation. It was a statement. I'm doing all right. In 1952, Mr. Potato Head made toy history. But the first version didn't even come with a body. Kids had to find a real potato and stick in the plastic eyes, nose, and goofy smile. Imagination wasn't just encouraged, it was required. Back then, America had just over 150 million people. Towns were smaller, streets were quieter, and a trip to the grocery store meant seeing familiar faces. You didn't lock your doors, not because crime didn't exist, but because trust did. If someone knocked, you invited them in. If they didn't knock, it was probably your cousin returning your ladder. Sunday dinner wasn't optional. It was a weekly tradition. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, maybe a green bean casserole, and that weird Jell-O mold no one liked, but everyone took a spoonful of anyway. It wasn't about food, it was about being together. Drive-in theaters were magic. You'd pull up, hook the speaker onto your car window, and watch a double feature under the stars. The popcorn might have been burnt, but if she held your hand, none of that mattered. In 1953, the TV dinner was invented. A full meal in a foil tray for just 98 cents. It was warm, convenient, and futuristic. No one called it processed food. Back then, it was just exciting. Color TV arrived in 1954, but with a $1,000 price tag, most families stuck with black and white. When a neighbor got one, half the block came over to watch Bonanza in full color. The interstate highway system didn't exist until 1956. Road trips meant paper maps, spare tires, and hoping your engine held out. If you broke down, you didn't call anyone, you ate sandwiches and flagged down help. That same decade, Elvis Presley hit the airwaves. His hips were too much for some, but for teenagers, he was electric. He didn't just sing, he changed the culture one vinyl record at a time. Milk came to your door in glass bottles, delivered by the milkman before sunrise. You'd hear the clink of bottles and maybe get to peel the paper lid before breakfast. That sound was the start of your day. Every kid wanted a red radio flyer wagon. It carried toys, groceries, pets, even younger siblings. And when it rained, you flipped it over and turned it into a pirate ship. No batteries, no screens, just pure imagination. Most families had one car, one bathroom, and one television with no remote. Somehow, everyone made it work. You fought over the dial, not the streaming service. And if you wanted to change the channel, you got up and Dad made sure you were the one to do it. In 1950, the average American salary was about $3,200 a year. And that actually meant something. You could buy a home, raise a family, and maybe even take a vacation once a year, probably to Grandma's house. School lunches weren't pizza pockets and chocolate milk. You got meatloaf, peas, mashed potatoes, and a tiny carton of milk. And you ate it because the lunch lady looked like she bench-pressed flour sacks for fun. Television antennas popped up like metal trees on rooftops. Families climbed onto garages with a wrench and a prayer, adjusting inch by inch until the static turned into Lucy and Ricky. One twist too far, and back to snow you went. If your mom needed bread, she didn't order it from an app. she sent you. Grocery stores were small, local, and everyone knew your name. $1 got you bread, milk, and some change. In 1950, TVs had screens the size of dinner plates and weighed as much as a mini fridge. No remote, no pause, no rewind. If you missed your show too bad, you waited for reruns. The first Waffle House opened in 1955 in Georgia. It was tiny, cheap, and always open. Truckers, teenagers, early risers, everyone had a seat at the counter. If you liked waffles and coffee, you were welcome. In 1953, something out of science fiction became reality. The first open-heart surgery using heart-lung machine. They stopped the heart, fixed it, and started it again. Medicine had stepped into the future. People shared house keys with neighbors before leaving town. The Johnsons fed your cat, checked your mail, and maybe left a pie on the table for when you got back. No alarms, no cameras, just trust. Kids played outside until the streetlights came on. There were no tablets, no smartphones, just bikes, jump ropes, and scraped knees. And somehow, no one ever seemed bored. Coca-Cola came in glass bottles. The vending machine took nickels. You pulled out the bottle, popped the cap, and the first sip stung your throat in the best way. Cold, fizzy, perfect. No zero sugar, no plastic. Just the real thing. Life in the 1950s wasn't perfect, but it was real. It moved slower. It felt smaller. And for a lot of folks, it felt just right. In the 1950s, your phone didn't fit in your pocket. It was a rotary dial bolted to the wall. And if you misdialed the last number, too bad, start over. Long-distance calls were planned like events. And privacy? That depended on whether your neighbor picked up on the party line. You didn't need a gym membership. Chores did the job. Mowing the lawn with a manual push mower. Splitting wood for the stove. Hanging laundry outside in the sun. Carrying water from the well. That was your workout. And somehow, Grandpa had calves of steel. Back then, flying was glamorous. People dressed up for it. Men wore suits and ties. Women wore heels and gloves. You got real meals, legroom, and friendly smiles from stewardesses. No one wore sweatpants. No one tried to board with a goat. In the 1950s, a man's toolbox wasn't just a box, it was his pride. Heavy steel, no labels, no fancy colors. Just grit, grease, and decades of know-how. You didn't throw things out, you fixed them. And if your neighbor's mower broke down, you didn't call a repairman. You walked over and helped. Polio haunted every parent's mind in the early 50s. Swimming pools closed during outbreaks. Playgrounds emptied. Then in 1955, Jonas Salk's vaccine arrived, and it felt like the whole nation exhaled for the first time in years. If your family had a station wagon, you were living the dream. No seatbelts. Windows down. The dog's tongue flapping in the breeze. Dad yelling over the radio. Mom handing out sandwiches from a cooler. It wasn't comfortable, but it was freedom. The neighborhood barbershop was the local hub. Haircuts, gossip, advice, and half-whispered secrets. No Yelp reviews. Just Lou, who'd been cutting your hair since Eisenhower took office and still charged $2. No GPS either. If you got lost, you stopped and asked someone. They pulled out a pencil, grabbed a napkin, and drew you a map. You trusted strangers. And somehow, they never sent you the wrong way just for fun. When the ice cream truck came rolling down the street, kids didn't walk, they sprinted. Barefoot, quarters in hand, screaming for bomb pops and drumsticks. Nobody cared about sugar. Just that first bite, half-melted, sticky fingers all afternoon. High school shop class meant something. You learned welding, woodwork, maybe even rebuilt an engine. You didn't just leave with a diploma, you left knowing how to fix a lawnmower, build a bench, and patch a leaking roof. In 1951, the first nuclear power plant lit up 4 light bulbs in Idaho. Just 4. but it was the spark of something massive. America believed in the atomic future equal parts, hopeful and terrifying. Kitchen appliances were the future in chrome. Blenders, toasters, waffle irons, sleek, shiny, and built to last. And if they broke, Dad didn't replace them. He opened them up with a screwdriver and figured it out. Bike helmets? Elbow pads? Not in the 50s. You rode with the wind in your face and streamers on your handlebars. You crashed, limped home, and Mom slapped on iodine like it was holy water. And you kept riding. TV signed off at midnight. No 24/7 channels. No binge watching. Just the national anthem, then static. That was your cue time for bed, or risk Dad stomping down the hall yelling, "Turn that thing off." Back then, car keys were optional. Most trucks didn't even lock. You parked, slid the key under the visor, and walked away. No alarms, no fobs. Trust was your security system. Now you need a password to heat soup. When you got sick, you didn't Google symptoms. You called Dr. Wilson. He came to your house with a black bag and a tired smile. He didn't need an app, just a thermometer and 30 years of experience. And somehow, that made you feel better already. Penny candy actually cost a penny. Bubblegum, Mary Jane's, liquor shawl behind glass jars at the corner store. You handed over 5 cents and walked out like royalty. It wasn't just the sugar. It was the choice, the freedom, the joy. Home thermostats didn't do much. In winter, you wore a sweater. In summer, you opened a window. If you complained, Dad said, "It builds character." And you believed him because being called soft in front of your siblings was worse than the cold. Sunday mornings were for gospel and headlines. No endless scrolling. Just radio voices in the background while bacon sizzled on the stove. Dad read the paper, Mom made coffee. And for a moment, the world felt still. Most milk, butter, and meat came from farms nearby. The grocery store didn't offer 20 brands. It offered one that worked. And nobody asked if it was organic. It just was. That's how food used to be. And yes, cigarette ads were everywhere. On TV, in magazines, even at the doctor's office. Some brands claimed they helped digestion. Different time. Different logic. It sounds crazy now, but back then, lighting up was just part of life. Your boss smoked at his desk. Your doctor had an ashtray. It wasn't rebellion. It was routine. Kids respected their teachers, or at least feared their rulers. Discipline wasn't optional. You stood when spoken to, said, "Yes, ma'am," and didn't talk back unless you were ready for a boxed ear and a note sent home. And trust me, no one wanted that note. Nothing got thrown away. Radios got new tubes. Shoes got new soles. Toasters got rewired. Keeping things running wasn't about being cheap. It was about pride. And when something finally broke for good, it felt like a small funeral. A man with a briefcase and a hat was just part of the scenery. He kissed his wife, caught the 8:15 train, and worked downtown. It wasn't flashy, but it was steady. And each night, like clockwork, he came home tired, but proud. The Jell-O salad was in its prime-line Jell-O with cottage cheese, fruit floating like suspended magic, maybe a few carrot shreds for texture. Nobody truly liked it, but everyone ate it. It was tradition, and tradition mattered. When a neighbor had a baby, the whole block brought casseroles and old cribs from the attic. No registries. No online wish lists. Just people showing up. The new dad handed out cigars. The new mom stayed home for a week. That's just how it was. Roller skates clattered on the sidewalk like thunder. You wore a skate key on a string around your neck. If a toe clip broke mid-ride, you walked home barefoot, socks bloodied, smile wide. Every diner had a jukebox at the table or by the door. Drop in a dime, twist the dial, and wait for Chuck Berry or Patsy Cline to crackle through the speakers. For one moment, the whole booth fell silent in perfect harmony. Paperboys were tiny titans. Up before sunrise, canvas bags heavy on their shoulders, flinging newspapers with sniper precision. Rain or snow, no excuses. If you wanted to make money as a kid, you didn't sell candy bars, you delivered. In 1957, the Soviets launched Sputnik, a shiny metal beach ball that shook America. The space race began overnight. Suddenly, kids heard more about science than ever before. A movie ticket cost just 48 cents. Under a buck got you a seat, popcorn, and maybe a cartoon before the main feature. No online booking, no trailers. You showed up, sat down, and it was usually worth every cent. In 1953, Watson and Crick mapped DNA's double helix. Most folks didn't get the science. But decades later, it would change medicine, genetics, and even catch criminals. Back then, it was just a cool sketch in a journal. You could drive home a brand new Ford F-100 for under $1,500. No touchscreen, no GPS, just steel, bench seats, and an AM radio. If it broke, you didn't panic. You popped the hood and fixed it. The Korean War began in 1950. By the time it ended in 53, over 1.7 million Americans had served. It didn't get movies or medals like World War II. But for thousands of families, it left a mark quiet, cold, and hard to forget. Most homes didn't have air conditioning. You cooled off with lemonade, fans, and maybe a nap in the basement. When it got really hot, nobody whined. It was just summer. Marilyn Monroe wasn't just a movie star. She was the movie star. In 1955, she started her own production company, unheard of for a woman at the time. Some saw the blonde bombshell. Others saw rebel sharp, savvy, and unafraid. Bathrooms came in pastel, pink, mint green, baby blue. Tiles, tubs, toilets, all matching. And if you had 3 kids, bath night meant military precision. Oldest in first, youngest last same water. In 1958, a microchip was invented. At the time, no one cared. But that tiny sliver of silicon would one day power everything. Back then, people were still more amazed by the garage door opener. In 1957, American Bandstand hit the airwaves. Dick Clark in a skinny tie. Teens dancing in saddle shoes while their parents frowned from the kitchen. It wasn't just music, it was culture. Cool, broadcast coast to coast. If your town had a pool, you were lucky. The chlorine could bleach your hair. The lifeguards had zero patience. And still, every kid cannonballed into the deep end like it was tradition. The hula hoop arrived in 1958. 25 million sold in 4 months. Driveways turned into spinning arenas. Kids got dizzy. Parents tried it after dark. Most pulled something but smiled anyway. Homemade ice cream wasn't just dessert, it was ceremony. Salt, elbow grease, and waiting. But when it set, it was the coldest, creamiest thing you'd ever tasted. Nothing from a store came close. Rock and roll didn't creep in. It exploded. Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Elvis. It wasn't safe. It wasn't quiet. And that's why teens loved it. For the first time, music didn't ask permission. It kicked the door open. You didn't buy couches online. You went to the furniture store, sat on them all, drank coffee with the salesman, and maybe had it delivered by someone who lived down the street. If it broke, he came to fix it. McDonald's had just started franchising. 9 items on the menu, a 15-cent burger, 10-cent fries. No app, no delivery. You walked up, paid in coins, and ate it on the hood of your car. And somehow it was perfect. Salesmen came to your door vacuums, encyclopedias, brush sets. They wore suits, smiled wide, gave a demo in your living room. Sometimes Mom bought, sometimes she didn't, but she always offered coffee. It was just polite. In 1959, Hawaii became the 50th state. Volcanoes, beaches, hula skirts, it felt like a postcard brought to life. And suddenly, Americans dreamed of palm trees, pineapples, and paradise. Typewriters clacked in every office, classroom, and home study. If you made a mistake, you didn't backspace, you used whiteout, or you started over. And nothing matched the rhythm of that final ding and the slide of the carriage return. It was the sound of someone deep in the zone. On Halloween night, kids didn't buy costumes, they made them. Ghosts from old sheets, cowboys with charcoal beards, cardboard robots with blinking hope. You walked from house to house with a pillowcase, no parents in sight. Just kids, candy, and a night that felt like magic. In the 1950s, your TV wasn't sitting on a stand. It was the stand. Big wooden cabinets with built-in legs and speaker cloth fronts. When it broke, you didn't toss it, you called the repairman. He showed up with a toolbox, a cigarette, and stories. Men wore hats, not for fashion, but because that's just what men did. Fedoras, flat caps, pork pies. You tipped it in greeting, removed it indoors, and never questioned the rule. It was automatic. Women curled their hair with metal rollers and dried it under helmet dryers that looked like alien tech. Salons smelled of hairspray, herm solution, and whispered secrets. It wasn't just about beauty, it was about community. In 1957, a quirky little book called The Cat in the Hat hit shelves. Written with only 236 unique words, Dr. Seuss made learning to read fun, wild, and unforgettable. It didn't just sell, it sparked imaginations. Postcards were a ritual. Any trip, whether across the country or 2 towns, over meant buying a card and sending it home. Thinking of you cost a few cents and said everything. Many people saved them like tiny souvenirs. Some still do. Banks had strict hours. If you didn't make it before 3 p.m., on Friday, you were out of luck until Monday. No ATMs, no apps, just a teller behind glass, a passbook in your hand, and the mechanical thunk of your deposit being stamped. In 1955, Disneyland opened its gates. Walt Disney himself walked the grounds on opening day. Only 18 rides. Melting pavement. A plumber strike. And yet it became the happiest place on earth. School desks had inkwells, even though no one used fountain pens anymore. You depoke your pencil through the hole and imagine a world where people actually dipped feathers to write. Sunday church wasn't optional. Families dressed in their best. Kids sat still mostly. And after the sermon, you shook hands and headed home for roast chicken. It wasn't just about faith. It was rhythm. The week's anchor. Before Google, there were encyclopedias. A salesman would show up at your door with a full set of Britannica. Your parents paid monthly. And when you had a school report, to that shelf was the internet. Lunch boxes were made of metal, built like tanks. They had Roy Rogers, Hopalong Cassidy, or Howdy Doody on the side. Inside, a bologna sandwich, an apple, and a thermos of milk. If you had Oreos, you ruled the playground. The first credit card, Diners Club, launched in 1950. It let businessmen buy dinner without cash. By the end of the decade, more people joined, and more forgot to read the fine print. In 1951, President Truman's speech became the first coast-to-coast live TV broadcast. One screen, one nation, one moment. It changed how Americans shared experience together in real time. Yard games were everything. Jacks, marbles, horseshoes, jump rope, and lawn darts, the kind with real steel tips that could stake a foot to the ground. No rules, just kids, chaos, and sunset curfews. Canned food ruled the pantry. Spam, condensed soup, fruit cocktail with one sad cherry. Moms turned them into casseroles that fed 5 on a single paycheck. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. Soap came in bars. Lifebuoy, Irish Spring, and Dial. They came in cardboard boxes, smelled strong, and lasted forever. Every bathroom had a crusty soap drawer filled with half-melted green and pink slivers stuck to the sink like glue. Brownie cameras made photography possible for everyone. Thanks to Kodak, anyone could snap a moment. Birthdays, beach trips, backyard barbecues, all captured in grainy black and white. If your finger wasn't in the frame, it was a great photo. Every home had ashtrays, even if not everyone smoked. They were glass, ceramic, sometimes built right into the furniture. Guests lit up at the dinner table, in the car, even in the doctor's waiting room. Smoke wasn't questioned. It was just part of the scene. TV shows ended with a message. Whether it was Lassie, The Lone Ranger, or Father Knows Best, you always walked away with something simple. Be kind. Tell the truth. Don't crawl into the well. These lessons were gentle, but they stuck. If your parents bought something on layaway, you didn't bring it home right away. You paid little by little until it was yours. No credit cards, no interest, just patience. And when it was finally yours, it meant something. In 1951, direct dial long distance became a reality. For the first time, you didn't need an operator to call across the country. You spun the dial, waited for the ring, and suddenly coast to coast didn't feel so far away. Car interiors weren't made of plastic. They were metal and vinyl. Leave your Chevy in the sun, and the steering wheel could fry your fingertips. Seat springs left marks on your legs, and if you hit the brakes too hard, that metal dash reminded you why seatbelts eventually became law. In 1952, the first barcode patent was filed. It looked like a bullseye. Nobody had scanners yet, but someone somewhere imagined a future where machines could read products. It took 2 decades to catch on, but the idea was born in a quiet lab in the 50s. Most families had one phone, one number, one long cord. No voicemail, no caller ID, no privacy. If it rang, everyone ran. And if someone stayed on too long, well, good luck getting another chance to call your friend back. Sidewalk chalk wasn't fancy. It was whatever white rock you found in the yard. You drew racetracks, hopscotch boards, and silly faces. And when the rain came, it all washed away. That was okay. You'd just draw it again. Every town had a soda fountain or lunch counter. Red stools, chrome counters, grilled cheese and cherry cokes. You'd spin in circles while the waitress yelled your name, not because you ordered, but because she knew you. Because everyone knew you. The world has changed a lot since then. But somehow, in the clatter of typewriters, the scratch of chalk, the jingle of glass bottles, we left pieces of ourselves behind. And maybe that's the real nostalgia. Not just remembering the past, but remembering who we were in it.